feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at MAYAAkai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to what felt like took forever to get to episode 60. Really, we should be like on 64 right now because I went like 3 weeks on an unofficial hiatus. But I kind of like that I ended the year on 60 to kick off the next 60 for 2020. So I figured what was par for the course would be, well, why not wrap up the show with going to the virtual mailbag and make it the last delivery of the year from all the different correspondence I've gotten from people with some questions. So I figured this is the best way to end the year with thoughts from the listening audience. So of course, as I always say, namaste. Good to have you all here. It's later than usual, but I kind of wanted to kick the wheels on this and try doing something later to kind of see how it would work out for me. So of course, this is another episode of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, the podcast that I would like to think is forward thinking, fresh, and it looks at embracing topics about mental wellness from a different perspective to make it a little bit easier to digest. The focus of the podcast is to pull back the veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that plagues so many of us in our lives, to help us identify the ambitions and to harness the motivation to help every one of us yield the satisfaction and success that we're looking for in our daily lives, not just the overarching idea of life, but in your daily life, because little things add up to the big things. So if you're doing the work on a daily basis, which by the way, it doesn't have to be rigorous or laborious, but you're doing the small things on a daily basis, it begins to quantify and it gives you something that you're looking for the long term. So if you're a first-time listener or viewer, welcome. Buckle up for safety, because occasionally it can be an unexpected bumpy ride. I may say something that you may be like, this letter today resonates with me. I can identify with this. I can see where this particular listener is coming from in their question or their thoughts. Now, if you're a returning listener or viewer, well, as always, welcome back. Always glad to have you here. You know the routine. Pretty much grab a paper, pen, pencil, jot down things. If something kind of stands out in your mind that you think, you know what, I want to go back and reflect on this later. But I'm glad she brought this up. So the next 60 minutes is all about you. So get comfortable. It's later at night, which means most people are probably at home. So you can find that quiet spot, grab your beverage of choice, and make the next 60 minutes just all about you. Now, remember, this is an interactive show, so you can always join the conversation. All you have to do is make comments, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, in the comment sections, and I will pop it up on the screen and share it with other listeners or viewers to the show. Before we jump into episode 60, of course, we have to do housekeeping things. You can always listen to episodes of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, at MAYAAkai.com. But remember, there's always different ways to get the M.A.Y.A content. It isn't just all about my website. You can always subscribe to my YouTube channel to search M.A.Y.A Kai. You're going to type that in and boom, you're going to get a whole bunch of Japanese anime. And then you're going to see me with my little smiling face, probably midway through it or so. But if you happen to have a podcast platform of choice, I'm not picky. I'll take it either way. You can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, Spotify. All you have to do is search M.A.Y.A, M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. And there you go. All 60 episodes will be there for your listening enjoyment. Hopefully by now you're all getting social with me, which means you're following me on Twitter and Instagram at Maya_Kai, Facebook, M.A.Y.A Kai Presents. That's the easy way to kind of get all the content. I swear I'm not a person that overloads my timeline with things. I try to put things out there that I think this is good to share. But other than that, I try not to go like crazy with posting a lot of stuff. All right, so we're into episode 60, and it's been a while since we've been here, like 3 weeks, an unofficial hiatus. So, as always, what do I say when I start the show? Open up your M.A.Y.A toolbox. Open it up, and the one thing you should always be removing from the M.A.Y.A toolbox is you're putting out your emotional intelligence. By now, 60 episodes in, I would love for people to take their emotional intelligence temperature to see where you are after 60 episodes? Do you find you're more patient? You have greater understanding of yourself, of others? I'd be really curious after we've gone through all this work of 60 episodes to really see where you're at. For those who are new to the show and you're like, what's emotional intelligence? I'm not sure if I have it or not. It's the ability to perceive, evaluate, and control your emotions, but have an understanding of where others come from. I constantly talk about this when I work with people in private practice. I say, your emotional intelligence is where you have to open up the toolbox and take it out. So when you're dealing with that person who is just not hearing you, who's not understanding boundaries, who's not just getting it, you have to understand that everyone's not going to be operating from the same level of an emotional intelligence as you are, because you're putting in the work, because you're tuned into Maya. So for all my newbies to the show, that's what EI, as it's affectionately referred to, is your emotional intelligence, your ability to perceive, evaluate, and control your emotions. The final time I'll say this, because I'm going to pick a new saying for 2020, but it was great for 2021. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Aristotle. If he thought that thousands of years ago, there has to be some inkling of truth in when you are in touch in the core of who you are, you tend to live a better life, make better decisions, work better with people, because you understand you and you understand how to insert yourself or remove yourself from situations. So knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. That was the entire overarching idea for 2021. I haven't quite put my finger on what 2022 is going to be, but it's going to be something within the same wheelhouse. Okay, so as always, this episode 60 is the M.A.Y.A mailbag. So if you too want to drop me a letter, like other people did, and these all kind of piled up over time, the virtual mailbag, aka it's my fancy way of saying email, you can also do it as well. All you have to do is email at getinspired@mayakai.com. You can give me a reflection on a particular episode. Maybe you've got a nagging question and you just kind of want to get my insight into it. And what I say to people is, hey, what you say may be worthy of just one whole episode, or I might pull several letters like I did for this particular mailbag and into this episode 60 with 3 different letters that I believe that everybody who listens to the show, one of these letters is going to either resonate with you. It's either going to be, somebody who you can relate to with this. It makes sense to you. And you're like, yeah, or you might say, oh, no, this is somebody else I know who's going through this similar situation. Either way, you can always drop a virtual letter, aka an email, to the M.A.Y.A mailbag. Just email getinspired@mayakai.com is how you will do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and, literally jump right into episode 60. I felt slightly guilty because I was so busy. Private practice is just eating up so much of my time. But the thing I love about it is there's so many new things I'm looking to bring into the podcast because of doing that one-on-one work with people. It's interesting. There's similar situations, but everybody has a unique circumstance, though it may be similar. That's why I always tell people, don't get too caught up in that you have a similarity with someone to mean you have the same joint issue. You don't. Commonality does not mean that you guys are the same. It means you share something in common. A lot of people kind of run away with that. Well, you have a history of trauma. I have a history of trauma. We have trauma. No, you have your trauma. They have your trauma. You both have trauma. That's it. And I always try to get people to think outside of stop trying to connect your trauma to others, because it is something unique and special about your trauma that I want people to find why it is unique to them. Welcome to the show, James O'Bannon. And as he said, just like this, the older I get, the more I get to know myself. I would agree with you on that. 100%. With years comes wisdom if you're using the years right. I agree with you. And if you take the time to stop, look, and listen to you and use that internal self-talk and pay attention to the dialogue you're having with yourself, you will grow. Only the people who want to shut down the dialogue are the people who really, truly struggle with what it means to grow personally and to be able to have better emotional intelligence. So thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. And just like James O'Bannon, you can just go ahead and type a comment in. I'll share it on the screen and read it. And voila, you've just now contributed to the show. All good stuff. All right. So let's jump into the first letter. And I want to say I didn't necessarily think these were of a level of importance, but I kind of thought, why not start light and then dig deeper with the other 2? It's 3 letters. So here's the first letter. Affectionately entitled Miss Passive. Hi, Maya. I promise you I don't pay people to say this. Miss your show. being on every week, but I've gone back to earlier episodes and I have found a lot of work I needed to do just in listening to those. One area that I really need work in is self-advocacy and communication. I tend to defer to others' moods, pace, or direction in conversation. I'm very passive. I often do not speak up, correct others when they are wrong. Ultimately, I allow others to control the situation that often directly affects me emotionally and mentally. How can I find the courage to express how I feel, truly become a self advocate? It's interesting because when you really think about self advocacy, this is where I would like to believe with most people that with age and maturity can come the ability to find that inner voice. Self talk is important because it's positive and negative, and what you do with it is what makes the difference. So, part of being an advocate for yourself, and remember it's interesting, this is like the one, there's lots of different things I've never gotten rid of because I feel like they always reoccur. Self advocacy is the ability to articulate one's needs and make informed decisions about the support necessary to meet those needs. Let's wrap it up again. Self advocacy is the ability to articulate one's needs. I need this, I need that, not wants necessarily, but needs, and make informed decisions. How can I get this done? What do I need? About the support necessary to meet those needs. That's the first thing that people have to learn about self-advocacy is what's really entailed in it. And what's entailed in it is understanding what you need, making a decision how to get that, and finding people or whatever it is you need to get the support. Does this mean that everyone's going to do the heavy lifting with you? No. It may mean a majority of it lies within your shoulders to do. But if you have people that are, let's just say, preventing you from achieving this, that is identifying something that does not look like support, that looks like a hindrance. So a couple different things I think is important when you talk about self-advocacy. One, knowing your origin story is so important. One of the things I always ask people when they say they struggle with finding their voice is I always say, has it always been that way for you? Were you raised to have a voice? Were you encouraged to speak up? Or were you constantly being told, quiet? One of the things that old school saying that's true, but we should rethink saying it, and I can't really say I think tons of people say it anymore, is that children are meant to be seen and not heard. Realistically, I get the theory behind the saying. There is a time and a place for everything. Well, actually, that's not true. Sometimes there's not a time and place for some things, just period. But generally speaking, when it comes to children, and this is where learning about self-advocacy is really key. It can begin really young. For me, I've always had a voice because I was always encouraged to speak up, not just to accept things because one, it was comfortable, or two, I was afraid of what the outcome might be. I was always challenged. Now, generally speaking, I was put in my respective place as a child when it came to adults, which, by the way, was a character flaw for me even as a child, because in my mind, if I really thought you were wrong, I was willing to step out and actually express that. Like, I don't agree with that. And I understand that you're an adult, but the problem that I have with that is this. And that's the way that I would say it. And they would look at me like, couldn't deny it, but because they were in a position of power, they could try to quail it, which was interesting. So for me, I was always encouraged to speak up, to not be afraid to have a voice. As my grandmother would say, may she rest in peace, closed mouths don't get fed. And that's the truth about self-advocacy. If you keep seeing the same pattern of behavior in relationships and you find you're not getting what you need to be happy, not want, but need. And when you go to look for the support, it doesn't seem present. There's lots of questions you should be asking yourself. One, did I express what the need is? Two, the person that I'm asking support from, do they actually know I'm asking for support? People have a tendency to make the assumption that you're supposed to know what you need and want. Like they're supposed to know this through osmosis. Absolutely wrong. And one of the things I want people to rethink, especially with self-advocacy, you need to express to someone what it is that you need and what you're specifically looking for from them. No, you should know better. No, I shouldn't know nothing. I know what you tell me. We teach people how to treat us. And this is where people often fall back into their comfort zones because they're so afraid if they tell somebody what they need that they might pull away. Well, if they're going to pull away, then the thing is, that's okay. Maybe this wasn't the right person for you. And then you might want to start looking at, why are you struggling with the idea if someone can't meet your needs? Why are you trying to keep them in your lifeboat? When we talked about the life raft of support, this is a person who's not trying to support you. Why are you trying to keep them in? Welcome to the show, Mr. Camps. Looking forward to more in 2022 from you. It's going to be a little interesting. I got some things that are a mist, so to speak. So I am looking forward as well. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. But this is something that people really struggle with. So one of the things I need you to think about is your origin story. Were you really raised as an individual to speak your mind, to have a voice, to express how you feel, to say what you need? Often it takes us getting into adulthood to legitimately be able to make that transition. And even then, we still sometimes don't know what it looks like. Something else I want you to think about is, if you're sitting here saying, oh, discovery is the first step, you have to identify the action. I'm being passive. And often that becomes a dialogue you can have with yourself through self-talk. Self-talk does not make you nuts. It doesn't make you crazy. It means you're having an internal conversation with yourself. And let's be real honest. A lot of times in the riffraff that we're involved in, we tend to know the answer to what we need to do. But for some reason, many of us want others to tell us because we don't have the courage to step up and do what needs to be done. As you become older, you tend often to need that less. But if you're a person that really struggles with speaking up, you'll go through your life in this passive, not even passive aggressive. It could turn into passive aggressive down the road, which is you agree, but by your actions or your words, people can clearly know you're not in concert with what they're saying. So the first step is identify. I'm being passive. That's a conversation you have with yourself. The most important conversation you have is with yourself. Like, hey, I'm being passive here. Why am I being passive? Why am I deferring to what this person is saying and what they want when really it's not what I want? I'm going to be honest about this. We're all guilty of it, that we often get in relationships or friendships and we just don't want to rock the boat. And I always say, why not? Because if you're not getting what you need, what's the problem? Turbulence often tends to have us grow and step up to the plate. When things are smooth and cool runnings, that's often when we're not challenged and we get comfortable. You got to get out your comfort zone, especially when you become a self-advocate. You're challenging yourself to say, I need this. This is how I get it. This is who I may need it from. So now I need to express this to this person. And either they're going to be on and off. And I'm going to tell you something. Based on people's emotional intelligence, they may not be on. Just know that. Something else I want you to think about, and this is a key one. I think I've spent more time thinking about this lately because I've reflected on some past interactions I've had with people. Know your conversational adversary. And someone's an adversary? Yes. Whoever you are being engaged in this conversation with. And what you need to determine, is this person friend or foe? Or are they a hybrid? Because often within difficult situations and dynamics, relationship dynamics, we can be involved with people who legitimately care about us, but they're really set in their ways. Some people have poor boundaries, lots of different things. So just because they don't necessarily respond to your requests doesn't mean they don't care, don't love you, or not interested. But often people are very self-serving. So when the self-servingness refuses to make the adjustment is when you have to look at your conversational adversary and say, if you're legitimately my friend, you're going to hear what I have to say, or significant other, whatever, parent. This applies to everybody. You're going to listen to what I have to say. And we're going to make some adjustments because this isn't working for me. Obviously, it's working for you. And this is why you're giving me pushback. This doesn't work for me anymore. Actually, it's never worked for me. I just went along with it. And unfortunately, what I always say, we teach people how to treat us. So when you allow bad behavior to persist or undesired behavior to persist, breaking those bad habits that we have allowed people to form within our relationship can be very complicated. So understanding your conversational adversary when you talk about self-advocacy is really important. A lot of times parents and the adult children shift. I deal with this a lot in private practice. And it's an imbalance that strikes, and everybody's stubborn because they feel like I have the ability to not have to deal with this. I can shut you down now because you're no longer the authority figure in my life. I'm now an adult. It's interesting. There's lots of dynamics. So when you're dealing with people in conversation that you've decided or you've identified is someone that you need to be as part of your support network in your self-advocacy, make sure they're truly a friend and not a foe or someone who's being fake. Because a lot of times we have people in our circles and we keep them in there for a long time before we realize, you know what, this was never right for me. Now, I'd like to say sometimes there's another great saying: people come into your life for a reason, other times a season. You may have to decide in the nature of those relationships, is this a person who was brought conveniently into my life for a reason and that reason has now been served? Or maybe they're just here for a moment that I might have needed someone to be there. But when we talk about the real truth behind friendship or relationship dynamics, is this person really, really there for me? Because if someone gives you pushback about you talking about needs, I'm not talking about wants. We're not talking about the icing on the cake. We're talking about, I need this to be happy. I need this for my emotional well being. I need this for my mental well being. I need this for my spiritual well being. I need this for my physical well being, whatever that well being might be. If somebody's giving you pushback and you're not talking about, I want, but this is a need, that's when you then have to evaluate that relationship dynamic and think, maybe this is not the relationship that I thought that it was. Because as long as it was convenient for them, they were roll with it. But now that I'm saying I need something different, now we have an issue. Now we've got friction. So know your conversational adversaries. When you start getting pushback, when you find your voice and you start saying it and you're getting pushback, now you got to evaluate friend, foe, hybrid, or maybe just fake. And that's a toughie. Something is also important when you become coming out of your way of being passive is always look for compromise. Look for mutuality. That's the important thing in discussion. You don't have to become passive aggressive. That's one thing people do, like, sure, okay, that's fine. That expression right there means no, it's not fine. I really don't want it. But I'm going to agree with you because for some reason I've made the decision that I have to appease you. You know, we develop a lot of bad habits along the way in relationships, friendships, about appeasing people. And when we hit our wall and we can't do it anymore, unfortunately, we've allowed some bad behavior, usually to flourish. And now we're trying to go back and do cleanup, and it becomes an issue. So just know that in conversation, and Miss Passive mentioned that she struggles with communication. How you set the conversational table is everything. You want someone to dial in to listen to what you have to say, but it always has to come across and it should be authentic. It's not being accusatory. So I always tell people when you got to have that real difficult conversation with somebody, first make sure the time is right and say to that person, you know, I really need to talk to you about something, but if you're busy, I can get back to it later because I really want to make sure it's a good time and we can really kind of focus on the conversation I want to have with you. Now, out of curiosity, sometimes people are like, oh, yeah, I'm good. But if you think it's not the right time, be like, yeah, you know what? I'm not sure about it because what I have to say is something really important. If they agree that you can talk about it, here's the second phase of that that's important. Yes, Maya with the glasses. Yes. It's important that you set the table and say this. I've been feeling this way for a while. Does not mean that it's you, it's me. Maybe it's just something in the situation that I'm missing. But I figured, opposed to sitting here this whole time and trying to figure it out, I would just come to you and ask you a few questions so I can figure out why I'm feeling this way. So I'm not asking these questions to offend you, but this is just how I've been feeling. And I figured, why not go to the source and you would be the source? And hopefully we can discuss this and this doesn't turn into something like personal because it is personal to me. But if it didn't mean something to me, I wouldn't waste the effort to talk to you about it. That means I'm asking you to be open-minded and to listen, and I'm not being accusatory because we may feel a certain way about something and we actually might be off base based on that person's action. You know, often knowing the nature of someone's character is really key. The more you know about someone's character and how they interact and their emotional intelligence, you often can legitimately interpret situations with them, and they don't have to go sideways. They don't have to go sideways at all. So just know how you set the table is so important to say, this is just some thoughts I've been having. I don't know. I'm totally off base, but I won't know unless I ask you. And then proceed to ask questions without being accusatory. Like lately, I've been feeling that somehow I feel like you're angry with me, but I don't know why. And you know, some people don't legitimately, this has happened to me. A person was legitimately mad at me. I didn't catch it initially. And the reason the person was angry with me was really off base. They totally misunderstood the nature of our conversation. But interesting, they had dug their heels into believing, oh, you just did that to be malicious. I was like, yeah, no, that's not what I meant. Here's what I meant. It was a very like just volatile situation. And no matter how open-minded I tried to be about it, that person had made their mind up. So at that point, I was like, well, all I can do is apologize because that was not my intention. But if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I can't change it. I just know that's not what my intention is. And I apologize. That's the best I can do. Once you apologize for something, because someone could come to you and have the same conversation, you are not obligated to be dragged through the mud. See, an apology means I'm taking ownership of what I've done, but I'm not going to let you drag me through the mud, because that doesn't mean because I did something wrong, especially if it was not intentional, that you then get to make me into a punching bag. That's where people get apologies totally wrong. Like, oh, I'm going to make you suffer. Oh, you a lie. No, you're not. I said I was sorry. And if that's not okay, if that doesn't work for you, I don't know what else to tell you. I genuinely did not mean for that to be the situation, but I'm not going to allow you to try to make me feel bad or worse about something when it wasn't my intention. And that takes courage to stand your ground with people when they're really pushing the issue. Unless you know you're wrong, then you may have to do your penance, so to speak. The last thing I want you to think about, especially when you're trying to come out of that passive shell, is stop working to accommodate others. This is where the apology piece get in. Lose guilt or shame in looking to accommodate you. So many times we tolerate other people's poor behavior because we guilt ourselves or shame ourselves into doing it. So we'll say, well, I'm going to let them do it because, they really had a hard life. Excuse me. I didn't create your hard life. In fact, I'm trying to here to help you have a better life. But this doesn't mean that you get to kind of exhibit some of the same poor behavior that people had given to you. You really have to check and challenge people about negativity that they bring from their past into present relationships. And you don't have to always accommodate somebody because they seem so emotionally fragile. That's when you need to have that conversation and just say, I feel like when I try to talk to you with things, you get really defensive, like really quickly. And then I feel like we're never, ever really able to have the conversation, which means nothing gets resolved. I want to do better at this. How can we better communicate than what we do? Because I'm not trying to make you defensive, but if I need to express how I feel, it doesn't mean you're right, I'm wrong, you're wrong, I'm right. It just means there's something we need to discuss. How can we put down the gloves and have a real conversation and have an exchange that makes a difference? Because that's what communication is. It's an exchange that addresses something that makes a difference. You don't have to keep accommodating people because they make you feel guilty or shameful for addressing something that rightfully should be addressed. Part of stepping out of your passive shell is losing guilt and shame and speaking up for yourself. That's usually the thing that holds us back, and fear. Like, I'm afraid to say this because I think they won't like me. Well, guess what? I'm sure it won't be the first person to like you, and it probably will not be the last. And getting comfortable with the idea that everyone's not going to like you is extremely important, my people. On my website, I'm going to definitely have some resources for you to check out. You can always go to M.A.Y.A.com, click on the podcast resource link, and there's going to be episode 60, 3 different things that kind of play into this. There's one I want to say for this particular topic for Miss Passive. It's on BetterHelp, and it really talks about, how to recognize when you're being passive and how to begin to take steps to address it. So there's some additional reading that can help you to dig a bit deeper into this and some things you can start to practice. Remember, though, the first thing is identifying that you're being passive. 2, think about why am I being passive? For what? What am I holding back for? This bothers me. Why should I allow this to bother me? Why am I putting someone else's emotions, feelings, thoughts, needs above my own? So you can always go to M.A.Y.A.com, click on podcast resource section, and scroll down to episode 60 and read all the different resources. Let's have a quick real talk time, and then we'll kind of get into a break. How often do we actually silence, or I like to say mute ourselves to accommodate others because of fear of rejection, losing, or upsetting them? And we're all guilty of this. We kind of dial it back because maybe they're a hothead and they get explosive the minute something doesn't go their way. Does this behavior exist due to failure to self-advocate, due to lack of understanding it? Have we allowed others' feelings to mean more than our own? And part of understanding self-advocacy is you are taking ownership of your emotions and you're assigning the value that has always existed and should have been there. You're saying how I think and how I feel, there should be space in this friendship or this relationship. This shouldn't be one-sided. I'm not saying that all relationships and friendships are always equally yoked, because they're not. Sometimes there does tend to be a slight imbalance, but it shouldn't be a gross imbalance. There shouldn't be. There should be space for everyone's needs in a relationships, as well as trying to accommodate wants when they make sense. But so often we get very used to not wanting to ruffle people's feathers. You know that person you have in your life that if you say anything opposite or you challenge them or something, or if they do something wrong and you call them out, they act a plumb straight fool. That's their way of not dealing with something. They can shut you down just by acting out. That means that person doesn't have the same emotional intelligence. It doesn't mean you have to keep on that hamster wheel with them. Step off and say, I need to talk to you about this. So if you're going to get upset, we can just talk about it later, but we're going to talk about it. Because if we're not going to talk about something, we can stop trying to move forward, because this can't all keep going the way that it's going. I have some things that I legitimately need to address. They're very important to me. And if this exchange, this relationship, this friendship, if this dynamic means something to you, you're going to create this space with me, because this doesn't just exist for me. It's supposed to be here for both of us. Neutrality. So, Miss Passive, I do hope that helped you to really begin to understand that if you've gone so long and you failed to have a voice, first you have to get that positive self-talk going. You have to identify when you see yourself reeling on your heels in situations, because why? Say, why am I reeling? Why am I afraid to speak my mind? What do I think's at risk? Or what's the cost of me being honest about how I feel? And when you begin to identify those things, then you can go back and readdress it. You don't have to jump hot and heavy right into something if you're not ready. Really evaluate. Remember, that's what emotional intelligence is. You perceive that you're being passive. You then evaluate why you're being passive, and you go back and you begin to control, and you find your voice and you express it to someone. This is episode 60. We reached into the M.A.Y.A virtual mailbag, the last delivery of 2021. And I picked 3 letters that there was tons of them there. And I picked out these 3 because I felt, I do believe that plenty of people, this will resonate with them. So we're going to take a quick break. When I come back, oh, wow. We're going to jump into the next letter. And this is an interesting one because I enjoy it, because it's feeling like I'm settling. I do believe this is something that a lot of people can legitimately identify with, that they settle for a lot of things in their lives, especially relationships. Let's have a conversation. You're tuned into M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. I'll be right back.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African-American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
You may not realize it, but these words, often used to describe someone with a mental health condition, can be very harmful. In a country where 1 in 5 people are affected by a mental health condition, it's time for all of us to step up and change the conversation. Just because someone's struggle isn't obvious on the outside doesn't mean they aren't hurting on the inside. We need to see the person, not the condition. Join with me, pledge to be stigma-free.
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.
Yes, get ready. A little shameless self-promotion there. Stigma-free is so important. We are not the labels that people often want to associate with us. And I think one of the first biggest steps in finding your voice is how do you identify what resonates with you? And you don't have to subscribe to what other people think. And that takes courage. All right, we're on episode 60, the final episode of 2021. So I said, hey, it's the last delivery of the year. I reached into the virtual mailbag to kind of pull some letters out for people who were sharing things. Remember, you too can add something to the virtual mailbag. All you have to do is send an email to getinspired@mayakai.com, and I will then kind of go through these different letters. And if you have something I think that's helpful or maybe can be turned into an episode with a couple of the letters, as I did for this episode, I will definitely and gladly incorporate it to answer your question. So that's how you can get interactive with the show besides just commenting and listening and sharing and all that good stuff. Okay, so the next letter, the next two to me, I think these are going to sit with you. So the second virtual letter is miss feeling like I'm settling. So this is how the letter reads. Hey, Maya, love the show. I'm not a fan of the idea of therapy, but slowly I've been considering subscribing to your checkup from the neck up approach. Okay. I reached out to you for some insight into my current situation. I have re-entered the dating pool, which, by the way, feels very shallow in what I'm looking for. Either way, I'm currently dating, no commitment, a guy that is very nice. He hits most of the desired traits I want in a man: attentive, financially stable, an old-fashioned dater. What's the problem, you ask? I'm not physically attracted to him. I tried for months to work past it, but it's just not there. I would have never dated him if we had met in person, but we met online on a website. His pictures were okay, but when I met in person, I felt his pictures really did not reflect what he looked like. I'm sure many people have had that experience before, right? He was heavier and his sense of style isn't really my thing. I'm on the fence if I should keep trying to like him like that or move on. Help. I'm stuck on when is it okay to settle? Woo, goodness. A couple things I might have thrown at feeling like I'm settling is, well, how old are you? How old is he? Dating is complicated. And I'll tell you something, it probably gets a bit more complicated the older that you get. Finding people that are single, let's say over 40, probably, or let's say 50, whatever, probably means they've been married or in long-term relationships. So there's always some form of baggage, and we get set in our ways as we get older. So, you said here that he hits on, and this can apply to obviously men, maybe a guy would say the same thing, financially stable, one we all love to really have in our lives, especially as we get older. No one's looking for financial projects at this point. At least I know that I'm not. I think most people feel the same way. And I'm not saying you're looking for someone to take care of you. You're looking for someone who just holds their own. That's it. He's attentive. Okay, that means he's giving you the attention that you want. And he's an old-fashioned dater. So I'm assuming what you're implying by that term is that he's a guy who opens your doors, pulls out your chair at the table. I'm assuming things like that. Old-fashioned dater. Okay. So it seems like he's maybe a courtship guy. He's doing all those things. And apparently that piece appeals to you because you feel that it has enough value that you just don't want to chuck it, because the one really important piece, and it is important, attraction is important, is missing. So what I would tell anybody who gets in a I feel like I'm settling phase, you have to really decide needs versus wants. When I say, what's your emotional needs? What are your mental needs? What are your physical needs? Let's be honest. Let's not be shy. We're all adults here. If you're a person who's still, let's say, a high sex drive and you meet somebody who doesn't have one, you guys may have some issues along the way because you may want something that they can't give to you. And that means you have to settle. And when you settle, you have to make sure that that's something that you're okay with. And in your mind, you're going to tell yourself, okay, I can't just chuck a relationship of a great girl or a great guy because they can't meet my physical needs. How can we find a way to remedy this? It's not always so simple. It's not. And I'm going to tell you something, that's often the one area that's difficult to have a conversation with people about, is about sexual performance. If they're the person not up to par, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this conversation. it doesn't go over well. If you try to say, I really need more of this, not that, people get really personal and in their feelings. Like they feel like it's a scathing indictment for some reason of who they are as a person, and it's not. So if someone has enough courage to you, Ryan, you okay? You're laughing now. Welcome to the show. I can't tell you, I've heard the conversation in therapy with people like, I'm really struggling with my significant other. This just isn't working for me. And there is honestly probably not an easy way to tell somebody that they're not meeting your physical needs. But if the relationship has value and you want to maintain it, then you need to say it. And they need to not be so upset about it. But that's a maturity level. So when I say you have to balance out wants versus needs, that means emotionally, what do you need? Mentally, physically, spiritually. For some people, it's there. Let's be honest. If you meet the most perfect, girl in the world, okay, I'm about to say this, and I'm not saying I'm the perfect. Obviously, I'm not. I'm that kind of person that I already know where I'm probably not going to be the best match for somebody. If you are really religious and you go to church every Sunday, thumbs up. I'm not going. It's not my thing. I support you in going, but if that's like a deal breaker for you, then I'm broke on that one, and you gonna kick me to the curb because I'm not gonna really budge on it because I'm just not really a churchgoer. Doesn't mean I don't believe in God. Doesn't mean I'm not spiritual. I'm just not into the church thing. But you've got some people that are really into it. And if they're going to incorporate someone into their life, they want that person to share that with them. So this is when you talk about needs and wants. That isn't just a want. Someone who's really into it, I'm like, no, I really need someone who's going to go to church with me. And I'm like, I'm really not going to church with you. So, and you might be like, Maya, you won't bend on. I'm like, okay, maybe you'll get me once every couple months. But if you're going to try to talk me into going every single Sunday, I'm not going. It's just not me. And I'm not anti anything. It's just not me. So this is what I'm saying, understanding what your needs are extremely important versus wants. Wants are the things that are just the icing on the cake. The needs are the cog that makes the machine run. And most people think it's the wants and they focus on wants first and not needs. So when the house of cards falls, well, it's because it's a house of cards, because you should never build things on wants. You should build your relationship on needs. So it's interesting. Once you do this little, inventory of wants and needs, you look at this person and say, here's what's complicated. It sounds like she can check off multiple boxes with this guy. She's not physically attractive. She can't check that box. She has to make the decision. Is she okay with that? Can she settle for that? Eventually, can you just not have, shallow house syndrome? Maybe go get hypnotized. I'm totally joking. She has to decide how important it is. Let's be honest. When we're not, and men probably will say this more so than women. Okay, maybe I'm being biased, but I think most men will be like, yeah, you might be right. If you're not physically attracted to your partner, chances are you're always looking at somebody else because they're attractive to you and the person you're with is not. It doesn't mean that when you're with someone that they're not attractive either, because you could be with someone attractive. We never stop looking at people. I mean, that's where people get a little insecure. Now, if you're a person who's staring at someone, that's different. But we don't stop noticing other attractive people because we're in relationships. It's respectful, just in how you do it. But if you can't look at the person you're with and have that attraction piece, that really might end up being an issue, because I'm going to tell you how most of the time these chips will fall. You'll get into this committed relationship with someone that you feel is a nice person, you may care for, but you're not into them in the level that you should be. And Lord behold, here comes that person, because the minute you're usually taken, oh, here comes that, that white knight and, everything you want. And you're like, yes, oh shit. And then you feel guilty, because are you just going to walk away from this person who is hit on all your other things you're looking for? You're just not attracted. So you have to really decide, Miss Feeling like I'm settling. If you feel that way, then chances are you are, because that physical attraction piece is important to you. And there's no point of trying to behave it's not. So when you talk about settling, especially early in a relationship, that's a red flag. And what you have to think about, what are you into this for? The emotional security, or does physical desire make more sense? Some people are still dealing with the expectation of, I kind of still, I want fireworks. I want to be attracted. And there's nothing. Here's the thing. You are not shallow. Remember the movie Shallow Hal? Just because you want to be physically attracted to someone that you're with does not mean you're shallow. Now, I think when you start maybe getting really lofty about expectations, like I want to whatever. We all are entitled to like what we like. But I just think at some point you should be realistic. Especially for us older women, our shelf life is not what it used to be. And unless the whole damn being a cougar appeals to you, then you might just be okay. But, you really have to be mindful about what's important. So for that person, I'm saying you need to inventory what's important to you. Emotional security, because you said he's hitting on all those markers for you, or just the physical desire piece. And it sounds like they haven't crossed the bridge where there's really been anything physical, because I guarantee you, if you can't rub two sticks together and get a spark, chances are most of us are probably not going to maintain the relationship, because there's nothing worse than someone's really nice and then they touch you or kiss you and you're like, oh. Not that I've ever had that experience, but it's interesting. We want to make people feel guilty about physical attraction. It's real. Why do you think the human race has moved on for obviously ever? Attraction is a factor, people. It really is. And yes, there are some people who have financial goals. So hence for that person, financially that's their attractive piece. That's what looks good to them. It doesn't matter what that person is. I like the financial side. So what this is looking like is looking right to me because I want the finances. But if you're not looking for the financial side and you're looking for something to be a bit more equally yoked, then you shouldn't just settle and discount physical attraction. But I would caution on this, because I think it's important to be honest with yourself about what you want. And if your needs are being met, if that's just enough. So if this is the one thing in the equation that you're struggling with, then let's be honest, don't be emotionally messy. It's so easy to kind of move along in relationships with people. You're getting to know them, let's be honest. Don't we kind of know, like, at first glance, especially with online dating, it kind of can throw you off into a tailspin. But don't we kind of know if we're, like, when we first meet people, if we're attracted? Okay, let's just say I'm going to kick the wheels a bit longer. I'm going to try not to be shallow how. I'm going to try to see if I can make this work. But please be mindful of something. Please don't be emotionally messy. Don't create collateral damage, because it's not fair to the other person. Because something else that often happens in these mismatched relationships is that one person is totally into you and you're just not into them. That's not fair. So if you're really in a place where you feel like, I'm not feeling this, I can't do this, be mindful of the other person's emotions. Yes, James O'Ban, emotionally messy. A lot of people are selfish. And my thing is this: if she's writing a letter about should she settle, she's already made her decision. I'm not exactly sure why she needed me to tell her. I just kind of feel like, that the physical attraction piece isn't there. And if you're allowing him to get any more emotionally invested in you, and he's doing all this stuff, he's doing all the right stuff to show interest, don't ruin it for the next person to come along who will appreciate what he's offering, and maybe the appearance part won't matter. Don't be messy. Just walk away and do it in a kind way. And I'll be honest, there's no easy way to tell somebody, I'm just not into you. There is no way. Look, nobody's that bold. Nobody's that balls to the wall. Not even me. I don't have the courage to look at somebody and to be like, because then it turns out, I didn't say I was all that. All I said was that this isn't doing it for me. And I just would like to leave it at that. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss it. I just pretty much don't want to waste your time. And I'd even gone as far as told a little white lie, like why it didn't work for me, because I didn't have the heart to be mean to somebody. But I also didn't want to lead them down this path on this emotional leash, because I'm walking and leading and you're behind me. That's not fair. You should be next to each other. So miss feeling like I'm settling. I think you know what you need to do. You just need to figure out how to do it. This is episode 60 of M.A.Y.A. We're in the virtual mailbag. It's the last delivery of the year, and I picked out 3 letters to kind of share with everybody. This is the third and final letter, and this one, I absolutely love it. Mr. We Ain't Good. I enjoyed this one. I said, I don't feel like I'm saving the best for last, but I kind of feel like a lot of people get this. Even the settling. I think most people can say, yeah, I've been there, done that. But this one, I think we've all been there. So, Mr. We Ain't Good. M.A.Y.A. I'm at the end of my rope with trying to take the high road in my relationship. We have been together, married for 12 years. The last 2 have been rocky. My wife cheated on me a year ago. According to her, it was only chatting online with a few different men, nothing more. I've worked to forgive, but forgetting has not really been easy. I still feel there is an issue in our marriage and she refuses marriage counseling, and I still believe she's online chatting. When I ask her, she replies, "We're good. I don't feel that way, and because of our family, we have 3 children, and I still love her. I feel depressed and sad at times, worthless, because she realizes this is hurting me, but still does what she wants. What do I do? We ain't good." This is one of those, I want to say, excellent. When somebody looks at you and you approach them about a situation that you know there's an issue, and they look at you and say, "We good," you know they lying flat out. Because if you're not feeling good, we ain't good. So you have to do a phase breakdown of this. Is that we infers all parties involved is good. But if she said we good, but you're not good, that means we're not we. So we're not good. That's the first thing. That's how you address it. No, we ain't good because I'm not good. So you're good, but I'm not good. So we got something we need to talk about for real. Now, mind you, this is really manning it up. This is really digging deep, because people know when they have the upper hand in relationships. James O'Bannon says, "She's doing way more than chatting. Run, bro." You know what? I don't know. I don't know. I'm just going by what the letter said. He said that that's what she said. So who knows? You could be right. If that's what here's my thing. If that's what your gut tells you when you're dealing with somebody, you've been with someone for 12 years. You have children with them. I think you tend to know the kind of person that they are. So if cheating was out of character for them, the question is, well, why did they cheat? He said things were rocky for 2 years. So obviously there was some discord in their marriage that wasn't addressed. And opposed to being the realistic mate in a relationship, you need to be able to have the courage when you're not happy in your relationship and to go to that person and say, "I really need to talk to you. I'm struggling with this. I feel like our relationship is suffering. I know we've been together for a while. So, sometimes you get the 7-year itch. That's the, fictitious sort of, you get to that 7, actually they say the 5th year, but it's a movie called The 7-Year Itch, where things kind of get a little rocky. You're past the honeymoon phase. So it's more about, oh, you know what? I got you. We good. You ain't going nowhere. Family, kids, house, car, joint account, 401ks. You ain't going nowhere. We good. But in actuality, maybe emotionally, mentally, and physically, you're not good. The areas and the domains that really matter in relationships. I tell people all the time, do not be afraid to go to your significant other and to say, even when there's nothing wrong, "Hey, let's do a little relationship. Let's do a relationship checkup." And they'll be like, "What? What's wrong?" They're gonna instantly get a little defensive and say, No. I want us to always have an open communication. And I want to know, like, how do you feel about our relationship? Are you good? Are you happy? How do you feel? Is there anything you feel like I'm not doing? Put the conversation on the table, because it gives them the ability to say, "Well, babe, you just don't hit it like you used to." It's the end of 2021. I'll be a little raw. Anyways, not to be funny, but seriously, maybe things have declined in that department. Let's be honest. It happens. And sometimes people just don't have the courage to say it because they don't want to be offensive. But if it's something that they feel like is suffering, they should be able to tell you, like, "I wish we could be more engaged." Well, then maybe that means maybe you now need to do date night, because let's be honest, children change the dynamic of your relationships instantly. They do. You become more focused on the kids, less focus on the couple aspect of your marriage or relationship. And over time, some people wake up one day and come to realize that, I know you, but who are you? There's a great article, I'll have to see if I can find that talked about your relationship should come first in your family, not your children. And some people don't get that. I'm like, it makes sense. Just because you put your relationship first doesn't mean your children will suffer. Actually, if you put your relationship first, it's actually for benefit for your children because you work in unison. So when your kids leave the house, guess what? You were still connected. You were still investing in them. It's an interesting concept, and it goes against the way we talk about how relationships and families should be. So one of the things is that, you got to ask yourself, where's a marriage emotionally, mentally, financially, physically, and spiritually? Are you in that 7-year itch window? Actually, a little bit past it, because there's different phases. There's that honeymoon phase. Then you kind of get the 7-year itch. And if you can work through that, Will and Jada, You get into the midlife crisis. And then you also have to consider what is the personal versus relationship shift. We all grow and change over time. And this is the one thing I think a lot of people lose sight of, is that who you are as 20 is not who you are at 30. That's not who you are at 50. And by 60, you've probably settled down. Now, there are core portions of your character that do not change. But as you live and you learn, you make adjustments and you become wiser. And a lot of times we have slight shifts in ourselves personally, but sometimes maybe your significant other doesn't know. Let's just say you went from being passive in your relationship and all of a sudden you decide you're going to advocate for yourself and you start speaking up. Instantly your mate goes, "Who's this? What's going on? You what?" And they don't know what to do with you because you're being someone different. So it's okay to share, I always feel like I'm really passive. I just go along with things and I'm always okay with it. And I just felt the need to express that to you because I'm pretty sure that's not what you want, right? Right? So, there's personal shifts. There's always relationships as well. With every relationship, how you started when you first started dating, if you're together for the long haul, it's not going to look the same 10, 15, or 20 years down the road. Relationships are work and require maintenance like everything else. And people need to understand that. So just because you get somebody doesn't mean you should become complacent and stop appreciating them or celebrating your relationship with them. But we get so caught up in the minutia of life that we often just don't pay attention to that. James, you're just really chiming into this show. James says, us men know when women is cheating. Do you? Do you really? It's weird, but we have this spider sense with y'all sneaky asses. I would tell you something, real talk, whether it's male or female, I think we know when our significant other is cheating. I think we know. You can begin to put 2 and 2 together about things that change because there's often a pattern of behavior that changes and it may be very subtle. But if you really know somebody, you see the shift. Now, they may try to lie to you and say, no, you're just being overly sensitive. No, as you say, bro. No, I'm not. Something just ain't right is what it comes down to. So we know that, but often we're fearful to address it because the truth hurts. And we don't want to have this conversation where someone says, well, yeah, I've been cheating and I'm leaving you. Because that's the fear of it. You've cheated and now you're leaving me. And a lot of people really, they struggle with the whole overarching conversation that has to happen. So just know that there's a subtlety to understanding when something isn't right. So just know that you have to be mindful about your relationship needs and wants. That's therapy work to a degree. Like I said, do a checkup from the neck up. Maybe once a year, you go in as a couple, you sit down and you talk to a therapist. Doesn't mean anything's wrong. It might just be a way to kind of express how you're feeling. Sometimes this mutual party can help you kind of sort through some things that maybe you've been struggling to have a voice to have. So, but it's always important to know, have your relationship needs changed over time? If so, how have they changed? And have you made your significant other aware? Have your relationship wants evolved? And if they have you let your significant other know? If they don't know your needs and wants have changed, then chances are they can't meet you where you're at because they don't know where you are. And this is where people, I say relationships are work. It's maintenance. Car, a house, anything like that, you do maintenance. Relationships are the same way. They require maintenance. And if you think they don't, look why the divorce rate is so high. Not to mention some people should never got married. That's not so. Something else I want you to think about through the journey is patience versus tolerance. What wears on you? It's okay to be patient and try to be understanding, but don't let that turn into full-fledged tolerance where you're starting to let everything and anything go because now you're falling into this passive kind of situation. Again, I put some great resources online for this. You can go to M.A.Y.A, click on the podcast resource section. We'll go scroll right down to episode 60. And I put an article from Psychology Today that kind of talks about, meet and catch and keep. Reality is a myth about relationships. And a lot of times people don't want to be honest. They think, I got you. It's good. No, that's, you can only keep things on the hook for so long. So you got to be mindful about how you really maintain and nurture your relationship. So, Mr. We ain't good. I'm glad you know that that's not true, that you're not good. And hopefully you're going to be willing to find the courage to talk to her. It seems like you've started and she shot down marriage counseling. Well, then say, if we're not going to counseling, then we better start to have some better communication. And if she's not willing to do it, then you've got some hard choices to make. And that's what I would say. Go get a therapist because you need to bounce this off of somebody. It's really, really key. All right, everybody. Episode 60, that wraps up Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition for 2021. There really should have been like 64 episodes, but I kind of had a 3-week unofficial hiatus. So I'm glad that, that I didn't actually do more than that. That I kind of let it sitting at 60 and the next 60 plus. Definitely will have some more content. There'll be more guests on the show. Definitely going to be some good stuff for people to definitely dig into. So as always, thank you to everyone for listening to this episode. I know it was later than usual, but I kind of got some takers in this and doing a little bit later. As I said, the whole purpose of this podcast is to help you to identify your ambitions and to harness that motivation that helps you to acquire the success and satisfaction that you seek in your everyday life. Remember, you can always find episodes of Maya at mayakai.com, but you can always go to your podcast platform of choice, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audibles, and Spotify podcast platforms. Just search Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and you can find the podcast there. Remember, you can always listen to all episodes of Maya at mayakai.com. That's the easy way. And remember, every episode has a podcast companion. If you're a YouTuber, make sure you subscribe and like my page as well. Make sure you get social with me. You subscribe, like, and share at Maya_Akai, Twitter and Instagram. Maya Akai Presents on Facebook and Twitter. So you're getting ready for 2022. Until next time, everyone. And this one should really start to sink in with you. Remember, your future becomes your past, and your present is no more. So live every single day to the fullest because it becomes a footprint for you and your past. And hopefully by now, I've said that every episode, somebody has figured out what that really means. And if I keep saying it and you don't know what it means, please say, excuse me, you say that at the end of every show and I don't know if exactly I mean. By the way, I stole it from Pearl Jam. It's one of their lyrics in a song. And it resonated with me instantly because I thought there's truth to that. So I will see you on the other side of 20. It'll be 22. Everybody be safe, be well, be amazing until I see you in 2022. Ciao, everybody.
Get inspired, get motivated with Maya Akai and the Maya, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find Maya on Twitter and Instagram at Maya_Akai. On Facebook at Maya Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything Maya at MayaAkai.com.